This episode of the Troxel Podcast is made possible with support from ArchIT. Are you tired of standard IT services that miss the mark? Choose ArchIT for specialized, proactive IT management, BIM support, and robust data security tailored for architects. Whether you're a team of 10 or a growing firm of 50 plus, ArchIT understands the architecture industry and will empower your unique creative vision to enable you to do your best work. Embrace a technology team that enhances, not hinders, your design process. Visit getarchit.com for your free IT assessment and start transforming your firm and your tech experience today. That's getarchit.com. Welcome to the Troxel Podcast. I'm Evan Troxel. And before we get into this episode, if you're a regular listener and are enjoying them, please use the subscribe button on both YouTube and in your preferred podcast app to let me know you're a fan of the show. Your subscription is incredibly valuable in supporting my efforts, and I genuinely hope that you'll find these conversations that are published here enriching for yourself and valuable for the AEC industry. Being a subscriber, which is completely free, directly influences two things: my ability to attract sponsors that help keep the show going, and my ability to attract high-profile guests, which is great for you. My goal is to deliver quality episodes to provide value to you and the industry as a whole. So if you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to do so. As I mentioned, it's free and a great way to support Troxel. Okay, today I welcome Timothy Halvorson to the podcast. Timothy is an expert technologist in the AEC industry, trained in architecture since starting practice in 2013. His passion is to unlock designers' creative potential, expression, and efficiency through harnessing the best tools available in the market today. His daily obsession is to catalyze innovation in the hearts and minds of curious creatives like you who are listening to this. In this episode, we discuss the challenges of technology implementation in firms, and Timothy shares his experiences in both traditional and tech-focused roles in the AEC industry and underlines the importance of understanding people, processes, and the potential of technology. We touch upon the struggle of change in firms, the evolving role of a BIM manager, the role of AI in creativity and efficiency, the importance of automating low-level tasks, the role of standards in a firm, the shift to cloud-based software, and the complexity of modern software. Timothy also introduces his new venture, Sevenfold, aimed at bridging the gap between academia and commercial practice, providing tailored solutions and strategies to people and firms interested in digital transformation. This was a fantastic conversation with Tim, and I hope you'll not only find value in it for yourself, but that you'll help add value to the profession by sharing it with your network. I've been working on getting more representation from the practice side on the podcast, and I believe it's an important point of view to highlight in this conversation of tech and AEC. So, without further ado, I bring you Timothy Halvorson. I'm joined today by Timothy Halvorson. Welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Evan. It's great to be here.
I'm very interested in our conversation today because I've been wanting to get solid representation on the show of people who have been working in the practice of architecture and getting that perspective, because the audience, I think, is pretty well distributed across the industry in AEC, but also I think mostly on the tech side and mostly in the delivery of technology side. And then there's this whole audience of people who are like, yeah, I've experienced that. Me too, who have been working in it, but I've been a little behind on getting those kinds of people on the podcast to actually get those conversations more exposure. And I've lived it, you've lived it, and I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Me too. Let's get into it. I'm so excited.
Well, let's talk about you first and your journey and how you've gotten to where you are in the practice side of architecture.
Yeah, so I guess a little background story. So I grew up in Minnesota, but I went to school in North Dakota State. Shout out Bison. Got my master's degree there, so it was a 4+1 degree. And then did 2 internships, BWBR in St. Paul, and then HGA down in Rochester, Minnesota. Got exposure to the Mayo Clinic, etc. And then jumped full-time into professional practice, traditional architecture, out at HDR in San Francisco. And that was, saw everything from concept to completion. Got on some interesting international projects doing healthcare, hospital expansions. And from day one, really was doing both Revit, Rhino, and Grasshopper in conjunction. So it wasn't just Revit or just Rhino. Our school definitely emphasized that. And so hit the ground running. What's interesting is in the mix, challenges with thesis, I sort of struggled my way through learning Grasshopper, and right in 2015, starting my professional career, I also published 24 videos in 2 months on a YouTube channel, sort of made the videos I wish somebody had given me. And that's prompted my whole content education journey, kind of in parallel to traditional practice. And, lots of interesting projects we can dive deeper on, but I had an opportunity to work doing some standardization on a certain account for a healthcare system, doing a lot of kit of parts, deep Revit family work, etc., standardizing data, room data sheets, etc., and then saw a couple projects through construction administration. Fast forward to present day, I did a year working on the construction side of the business. That was kind of my first exposure with a team of 15 to 16 computational designers doing deep light gauge ornamental steel fabrication, all in Rhino Grasshopper. And then, so saw that kind of model-based delivery connection. So you could actually, we were the razor's edge in the model, and then tolerance to assemble it and build it was from the other teams downstream. So that was really impactful to see how to collaborate in that way. And then once, COVID hit 2020, sort of automated my way out of a job there, then got the opportunity to go to Gensler as a dedicated design technologist. So back on the design side of the equation, and was in the Southwest region. So served 850 designers, 1,000 people in 6 offices, and got exposed to 20 to 24 practice area types. And so that really opened up all the different, just getting exposure to the different types of design, all the challenges with schedule, teams, and then trying to mix in how do we get more building science simulations, sustainability, that kind of simulation we woven into the process. So I spent about half my time for 2 years really going deep on the simulation software, and again navigating how to introduce that and integrate it to the design process without being overly disruptive to how people worked. So we can definitely dive deeper on that as well. And so now I'll just wrap up with Sevenfold. That's my own business, trying to bring to the industry consulting services to help drive digital transformation, and self-paced courses to upskill everybody. That's the goal.
Nice. I'm particularly interested in the implementation part because like you said, you came from kind of this background doing ornamental metal, steel fabrication, where you're working with a really specific part of the industry and really like becoming an expert in that. And then you're moving into design and design technology implementation, and like you said, trying not to disrupt the way people were working. And there's this weird balance working in a firm of trying to navigate that, right? Because I think, so we met at the Confluence conference in Orange County, right? And the topics that were being talked about there were AI. It's very cutting edge, leading edge topics, and excitement in AEC around these. And then there's the actual practice side, which is having to potentially change the way they work to use these new tools. And that is disruptive when everybody's focus is on the project deadline. And that has never changed, right? And so that the difference between innovation and adoption is only getting bigger and bigger because more and more technology is being developed and released all the time. Our attention spans are getting shorter, and yet the goal of the practitioner has never changed, which is I just have to deliver this project. And it is disruptive and I think there's a fatigue around that in firms for a majority of people in firms, not everybody, because there's certain people who are just wired in a firm to constantly be looking at and trying new things, and that's how they operate. But for the most part, it's not like that at all. and they
Mm-hmm.
just see it as like, seriously, another one, right? Are you kidding me? Why is there even a new version of whatever program every
Mm-hmm.
single year? Can we just have a break, right? And can we just like settle in
Mm-hmm.
and deliver on what we already know how to do really well? And so there's this battle that's
Mm-hmm.
raging inside firms. And you've worked in one of the largest firms. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
really curious to hear your experience from that side of things, because
Mm-hmm.
how do you balance bringing in new ways of working that are potentially way better, way more efficient, way more data rich, which has its own implications as we move
Mm-hmm.
down the pipeline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus this like, stop, just stop. I don't need another way to do this, or I don't need a new way to do this because my deadline is Friday, right? So I would love to, I just spit out a lot there, but I know you've lived
Mm-hmm.
this, and you've lived this in much more recent history than I even have. And
Mm-hmm.
because I know how hard it was from a leadership standpoint to get teams to adopt technology, but you're working much more boots on the ground in the firm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are your experiences there? Because what I really want to get out of this conversation is I
Yeah.
want technology providers to really truly understand what it's like to work in a firm, because a lot of times they're coming at it from the outside. They may have a history of working in AEC. Most of them don't, maybe. And so just what is it actually like from
Mm-hmm.
an implementation and usage standpoint on a day-to-day of the life of an architect?
Yeah. Small question. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
small question.
easily
Just pick. Just
three
if you
months of
could just answer that
conversation.
really quickly, that'd be great.
Yeah.
It's complex, right? And it's nuanced. So
No, I
I
got
think
you.
you
I
could
got
pick
you.
anywhere to start off,
Yeah,
and let's
I
let's
got it.
jump into this conversation.
Well, I'll start here. It's, you know, how do you get into a design technology role? I get asked
Hmm.
that question a lot. Well, you sort of, people with interest, curiosity, that knack for 1% better, they have that investigative, curious mind. They get better and better at the tools. And next thing you know, they're sort of, okay, you're a really good doer of using the tools, but we're going to throw you into leadership, which is people, not tools anymore.
Different skill set.
It's not
Yeah.
systems. And I think
Yeah.
that's the inherent challenge, is navigating the internal psychology and emotions around change, which
Hmm.
gets right back into change management, And so it's not just technology and change, it's the broader, everyone's struggling with this. And so was surprised how much time I thought about how people learn and how people think, and how that's different than myself. So there's never a wasted time when you deeply understand the people that you're trying to serve, how they want to work, not how you prefer to work. And if you're trying to impose something on them, eventually it's going to kick back. And so having, in terms of technology providers, and that's part of my job, was actually, if I'm talking to the principal in charge, I would teach technology in terms of managing clients' expectations. If it's talking to a design manager, I'm talking in terms of staff, scope, fee, and schedule. If I'm talking to a design director, it's design intent and expression. What's the vision? And if it's someone doing the modeling
Yeah.
effort, it's the buttons and the workflows and the small sized, bite sized deliverables. So in a weird way, I was operating like a project manager, but like specific to the workflows of technology to get to a deliverable. And that was one thing that we can come back to maybe if you want, but it's enhancing that kind of managing up conversation from the people who are boots on the ground,
Hmm.
as you mentioned, doing the work, giving them
Hmm.
language so that they can set better expectations and not burn out. But we can circle back on that. In terms of just being on the inside, though, the pace of change hasn't slowed down. You're completely right. And just when we sort of had it all figured out and humming, 2023 hit and AI was sort of publicly released, even though people who are on the inside knew AI was sort of brimming. They just decided, okay, this is the year. It's all coming out. And, being architects, we go with the shiny object syndrome. And I've heard that when I was in San Francisco for 4 years, talked to enough startups, and there's this quick kind of spike of adoption. And then people realize, how do I actually use this? And what is the actual ROI? And I think that's the pros and cons of architects. We're really quick to pick something up new, but then, it's sort of getting excited about the emotion, the possibility, and assuming that it immediately makes an impact towards differentiating my practice from everybody else. And that's really what I've been trying to nurture, is the value-based conversation. So it's not just picking up the latest tool, going faster and more efficient. It's saying, how does this extend and enhance my or our firm's unique creative voice? And so when it comes to data, I started to pick up this term, data informed or design led data informed. I used to talk about data driven design, which sort of assumes that the data is one making all the decisions and the designer sort of put in the backseat, which is a fallacy in my mind. We need to get better about understanding the data we're given and how that relates to our decision making. So how am I allowing that to inform my process? Which, some things are subjective, some things are objective. And I think people who are very technically oriented want the data to decide everything for them. That's a mistake. I see that in my mind when I think of like the, in quotes, true engineering mind, which sort of says, I'm going to build the perfect product and people should just know it works and it's the best because of all the things happening under the hood. And yet the first user shows up and they can't even get past the user interface because it's so cryptic, right? So there's that line to walk. Like, it may be beautifully bundled from the person who made it, but how usable is it? How intuitive is it? So there's always that line to walk, again, on how people navigate visuals and the whole UX psychology. But I found just cultivating the conversation, I call it creating the mental model. We do with digital models all the time. But if I can't imagine where I'm going, what I'm trying to achieve, it's not trying to be deterministic with your approach, but it's saying, we need to go in this direction and these are the important pieces, right? Am I measuring my carbon footprint, or am I trying to balance the budget, time and schedule, or, all these factors we have to deal with. So the fundamental nature is that architects are getting pulled in every direction more than ever before. I personally see the opportunity, if we wanted to as architects, to return more design build scope where it's kind of done all in-house, end to end, if they wanted to. The technology's there, which could simplify the process. Because then you have less people involved, or less room for playing telephone, or the opposite, where you actually have a true seamless model-to-model exchange. And we do fully embrace digital twin technology, and that is the source of truth. And we understand the implications of really robust, high-quality, fully vetted data that composes our models. And I think both can exist in the design world today.
This episode is made possible with support from Chaos Enscape. This is the perfect time to set good intentions and resolutions for the months ahead. Whether you aim to solve your design challenges faster, run your projects more smoothly, make quicker decisions, or share immersive walkthroughs with the click of a button, here's some good news. You won't need any resolutions. Chaos Enscape has the best 3D workflow solution. Chaos Enscape is the industry-leading real-time visualization plugin that is 100% fast, 100% easy, and fully integrated into your favorite design tools. It is the trusted choice of over 500,000 monthly users across 150 countries. Starting today, you can get a 20% discount on fixed and floating annual licenses. Just head to chaos-enscape.com and use code RES24 at checkout. That's chaos-enscape.com using code RES24 at checkout to supercharge your design workflow. Thanks to Chaos Enscape so much for their support of this episode. And now let's get back to the conversation.
So
the problem is people, Timothy. The problem is people right there, right? Because
yep.
And you've experienced this, right? Like you have this vision of what the true potential of the digital twin ecosystem throughout the entire process could be. And then once again, I'm just going to probably end up keep coming back to this, which is my incentive is to hit the deadline on Friday.
Yes.
And so therefore I take shortcuts to make sure that happens, because my job, my bonus, my salary actually depends on that. It actually depends on not implementation and like true precision in the process and making sure that this data is useful later on for somebody else, for me, for the client. Because like, honestly, the thing that actually matters is we have to deliver the project on time, on budget, right? And so
I can come back to that. I
that
forgot
that is
to answer that
hard.
part.
It is
Hmm.
hard because you can't. It's hard to enforce, especially in a big firm. I mean, and I guess that's kind of another thing I would love to hear about from your experience is
Hmm.
how do you get people on board? How did you sell that vision? Because I think it is kind of a selling at some point. Like it's you're doing marketing and promotion of a process within a
Hmm.
firm for a better outcome, um, because it does go in opposition to the incentives of right my how it affects me as a person
Hmm.
who does the work if I'm
Hmm.
the person who's driving the machine in the office.
Yeah, that uh, people are quick to identify people who are trying to drive change, and they'll label them and put them in a box. And so there is that
Hmm.
very real. I swapped out the word sales for persuasion
There
because
you go.
it because people have a certain connotation with a
Totally.
salesperson.
Sales is dirty. Yes, right.
Yeah, it's like these vendors who are trying to get on my calendar, just get away. I don't know, but
I think
um,
designers are allergic to the word sales too, even though they're
yeah.
selling design, right? So yeah, I agree with what you're saying there.
But that, unfortunately, that was part of it. I had to get into semantics and be like, okay, this is
Yeah.
getting a visceral reaction. This is opening the door to the conversation. And you'd have to read that in real time. Like I couldn't
Hmm.
book a meeting and then read it. And I started to learn over time, you have enough conversations, you realize the number one question out of everyone's mouth first is, I don't have any time. I don't have time.
Hmm.
And in prepping for this conversation, I realized it's not that you don't have time, it's that you're not making time because it's not. And we're such creatives. I'm like, we love making things. Why don't we make
That's a
time?
mindset. It is a mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And, but you see, how am I finding those little slivers of opportunity for the
Hmm.
1%, 5% of my time? I'm making time for coffee. I'm making time for happy hour. I'm making time for chatter with my friends at the office. And if we are more decentralized and hybrid, how am I buying back that time because I'm more productive at home, because I'm not as distracted? Why
Hmm.
don't I reinvest that in getting more skilled in my technology, right? So how we reinvest the time we're buying back shouldn't immediate. I think we need to have a slice of that that goes to research and development while we're staying profitable. And I like to joke with people, I made a full-time living pausing folks when they would say the word just, because it's right on the other side of it. There was this sort of, okay, here's the shortcut. They don't have enough information. They don't have time to in their mind to take to research and find the right solution. Again, right in quotes, because what is best practice? I mean, it could literally be different on a per practice area basis. And that was something I had to learn going from a place that was maybe 3, 4 practice areas to 24 to 26 practice areas. There's
Wow.
very different timelines, very different constraints.
Right.
The team's 3 people, that's a different animal than someone that's 250 people. And so going global on a 24-hour clock versus everyone's in the office, that's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how we, on one side, the bigger you get, the more you have to enforce communication protocols and points of contact, etc. But I think, really that point, am I making time? And we should have better conversations around what's the priority, what's the
Hmm.
trade-offs, how are we, delegating the work amongst the team, and not just, okay, this is the work you have to do. It's like people have a vision to the jobs they want to grow into. So then as long as they're getting that growth path as part of their work, they'll roll up their sleeves and do the stuff they have to do. They'll make the time for that. And that's what I'm constantly thinking about, is how to kind of pair up tutorials and resources and thought processes that break it down to be small enough. It's not abstract, it's concrete, it's actionable, and it's tied to the latest and best technologies. And that's the goal, is being, I'm not trying to sell sevenfold at all, but like the goal is that eventually is helping facilitate that third conversation, which is practice innovation, for the whole industry, because people will sort of figure something out and then keep it locked away in their firm.
Right.
And then the rest of the industry maybe suffers because they haven't caught up, and then
Yeah.
10 years go by.
Right.
I'm tired of that being the case, and I think we need better incubators to research this. Anyway, so lots of thoughts on that. But again, you have to get really comfortable sort of recognizing that the same series of questions always come out of people's mouths. And so you don't just dismiss it and say, well, you should do the best technology because it's important and it's the best and it's the latest.
Right.
It doesn't work. You have to recognize that there's real constraints. So if you can qualify it and say, hey, I'm asking for 1 hour of your time. We're going to do this study. This is the outcome you can expect. Here, I'll train the person. This is who will do it. And then moving forward, you can reuse that. So the time you're investing once can be not spent on the next project. And so you find ways to break it down super small. And then over time, you establish that trust. And then you don't waste the trust that you build with people. So then when you recommend something, they actually listen to you. So it's really very relational, very relational.
I want to go back to something you said earlier about speaking different languages depending on who you were talking to. And I don't think you said it just like that, but it is a different vocabulary or a point of view that they have. So somebody in project management is going to think a certain way, and someone in leadership they have different things that they're concerned about. So they're going to think a different way. And somebody who is in design technology, somebody who is just in somebody who is in project delivery, right? They're doing different pieces of they're a unique piece of the puzzle that the puzzle needs all the pieces, but you're bridging the gap between all those pieces potentially when you're talking about training and technology and making sure that the data is uncorrupted across the timeline as it touches each one of those people and in different ways, sometimes simultaneously, so sometimes in parallel, sometimes in serial, and it is complex and nuanced. But where did you learn how to speak to different people in different ways? Like, where does that, you noticed that, first of all, that it was needed, and then how did you develop that skill?
I bought a textbook. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Which book is that? I'll write down.
Yeah. No, my book. No, I'm just kidding. It's funny because I think there's this, you have to give yourself permission to get in there and get messy. I think we have to lay our egos aside, really seek to listen, understand, ask better questions. Making safe, it's all these psychology things. Make a safe space to hear somebody. And then, you have to work at understanding. It doesn't just happen. You can't just bump heads and you get it. It's like people have different priorities. And so, it's a team sport. And I don't want to go off on a team. I'm a huge sports fan and, former athlete before I got into college. But we're playing a team sport. It's not just one architect. We know there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that touch our projects from concept to completion and occupancy. And so the more we can appreciate the fact that everyone's bringing something to the table, the more we can say, okay, how am I interfacing with that team? Because not only am I understanding my role, but hopefully it sparks a better conversation on the role I can grow and want to grow into. And so now there's hope and incentive. So I'm, like I mentioned earlier, I roll up my sleeves to do the things I have to do because I'm positioning myself in the direction I want to take my career. And people can get really stifled. I think there's a huge attrition problem, which I won't talk too long on, but because they don't feel like they're being invested in, they feel like they're being pigeonholed. And so, how to interface, how to collaborate. We use this word a lot, but it's actually asking better questions. So I'm getting the right information out, and so the point is it goes all the way back to just, it could be as easy as Googling more specific questions so you get more specific answers. So how do I ask a good question or a good query? Now we're calling it prompt engineering with AI. But okay, if I'm aiming that at an AI engine, that's one source. What if I ask better questions to a subject matter expert at my firm? Because they've got 25, 30, 50 years of experience. Right. Maybe I'm going to get a higher quality answer if I approach them, right? And so we need to understand, where is my source? What is a higher quality source versus a lower quality source? What's a better question versus not and so then over time you start to realize, okay, this person in their functional role is caring mostly about scope, fee, and schedule. And you can make some generalizations because they're just operating in that day to day. And then you get, after the operations, you get into the specific personality and the specific practice area type. So, people on bigger projects are a bit more rigid and a bit more, kind of train master, everything's on time and budget and everything's clicking along. Smaller projects, it's much more nuanced and go with the flow. And So you just kind of learn over time. It literally just comes with repetition. I wish I could say you could go to a textbook and watch a webinar, but you just have to, I've spent more time studying personal development and psychology with architecture in mind, the craft, the actual doing of the work, but it's really team dynamics and how people think and create. So the more I studied that, the more it became easier to just navigate this on the fly.
I think that's the kind of thing that leaders need to pay attention to, is who
Mm-hmm.
are the people who are doing what you're talking about. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times a technical role in a firm doesn't have those skills. The
Right.
person, not the role, the
Mm-hmm.
person who is filling that role oftentimes doesn't have those skills. And then when technology implementation, I mean enforcement, happens, right? It is not welcomed. There's
Mm-hmm.
no empathy there. There's no, like, the things that you're talking about, like
Mm-hmm.
being a psychologist and trying to understand how this is going to land with that person based
Mm-hmm.
on their persona, their role, their incentives, their deadlines, what they actually do on the like you're trying to figure all that out
Mm-hmm.
so that your message lands with them,
Mm-hmm.
is very different than somebody who's just like the BIM police, right? Who,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And
I could
and
talk
I
about
think a lot
that.
of
Yeah.
times leaders are not thinking about the role that you're talking about being really human. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
really relationship driven,
Mm-hmm.
because to build trust, to build relationships over time, like, it takes the kind of understanding. And I didn't learn this from a book. I didn't learn it by asking Google questions or Chat GPT questions, which is probably a pretty interesting way to do it. I think now you could ask Chat GPT, for example, to build personas within a firm, and then coach you on how you could come up with questions to get what you need out of them. I think that there's some pretty interesting potential there. But
Maybe.
for me, it was by being in the trenches, by working on projects, by being
Mm-hmm.
a designer and having to work with clients and multi-headed stakeholder
Mm-hmm.
groups and community involvement, and just learning how to talk to people. I mean, working in the service industry is a great primer to when you just have to deal. Like, I worked
Mm-hmm.
in an Apple store for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
There were people who would come into the Genius Bar and they would be the nicest people ever because they just wanted help, and they knew if they turned on the charm, they were going to get better service. And then there were the assholes, right? And it was just like the geniuses who
Mm-hmm.
worked at the Genius Bar had to be able to deal with all those and take
Mm-hmm.
it in stride and have a
Mm-hmm.
thick skin when they needed to, so that they didn't piss off the client. But you learn that in the trenches. And
Mm-hmm.
me working my way up through design, I learned how to work with people. I learned how to communicate. I learned how to change my vocabulary, like you were talking about earlier, depending on who I was talking
Yep.
to really connect them to what we were doing and not talk
Mm-hmm.
over them or beyond them,
Mm-hmm.
because then they're out. If you do that, they're out. Their eyes
Totally.
glaze over. They pull out their phone. They start getting distracted by something else intentionally, because you're not talking to them. You're talking at them or over them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so all of those things are something that leadership should be. These qualities are things that leadership should be looking for in
Mm-hmm.
their technologists, because their
Mm-hmm.
technologists are driving the future potential of their company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the future potential is largely driven by technology and implementation of it at the human level within their
Yep.
firms. And so these things,
That's
you have to operate at that intersection.
I totally agree with you. I'm sitting here brimming like, yes, yes, yes.
This episode is made possible with support from Avail. In a world where precision meets creativity, where every line drawn holds the power to innovate, people like you are shaping the future. But let's face it, in the realm of design, the unknown is your least favorite companion. You've been stranded on the island of inefficient software, lost in the fog of endless searching for the right content. It's time to embark on a new journey, a journey to clarity, efficiency, and design excellence. It's time to get off that island and away from the unknown. Introducing Avail, the beacon in your design odyssey. Say goodbye to the daunting 10 to 20 minutes wasted per search, the costly interruptions in your creative flow. With Avail, your team will zip through content discovery, focusing more on designing and less on searching. Imagine a world where you can stop constantly fighting the costly fires caused by pulling content from past projects, building from scratch, or relying on personal libraries. Avail isn't just a tool, it's a revolution for AECO firms. Organize, manage, and navigate your project information with a leader that's proven in reliability, relatability, and success. Join the ranks of the top AECO firms who've already chosen Avail. In just 30 days, you could deploy Avail and witness a dramatic reduction in costly design errors. Whether it's your first CMS or you're considering a switch, there's someone you should meet. Will Rouse, your guide to all things Avail. Schedule an appointment and explore Avail's capabilities, onboarding programs, and professional services. Don't let your designs be clouded by inefficiency. Clear skies are just a click away. Go to getavail.com/stranded and book a meeting with Will to start your Avail journey today. Avail, where your best design is just a search away. My thanks to Avail for supporting this episode of the Troxel Podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation.
One thing I want to add was technology is like an extension of yourself, right? We invent tools. It's like, I don't want to use the Iron Man analogy, but it's because we couldn't do it with our own hands and feet. Now we have a pen and paper. Okay, that can communicate.
It's leverage. I mean,
Creates a medium.
we're tool makers, tool users, because it gives us leverage in many different ways, right?
As old as time, right? And so that's just part of what is the extension of humanity. Well, eventually it turns into our cities and all of the things in society, right? Like all the systems, all the building, and the means by which, I know we always say means and methods. Oh, don't touch that word. But yet,
right.
But okay, that's for like us constructing the building in reality. But now we actually have the ability to analyze when it's in its concept stage, when it's just forming. We're creating that feedback loop, and it's a different set of means and methods that isn't really tied to all the liability that's downstream, right? So we should be saying, hey, this opens up a different way of thinking. That's why I got so excited about it back in college, was you watch a tutorial and all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, that's possible? You try it out and then you just start to riff. It's like you're learning a whole new instrument. We talked about music when we started, but it's just, there's a way to express myself. And so, yeah, I'll get the efficiency back of producing the deliverable, but better than that, I can really explore different creative avenues. And I think learning this part should be automated, this part should be delegated to some AI stuff. Here's my creative expression over here. And now you can start to see where those lines are drawn a little bit better. And to your point, I mean, so one more point is I've stopped using the word BIM manager because design technology is bigger than BIM, right? Computation, viz, sustainability, AI, like there's way more buckets that have emerged just in the last 5-10 years, right? And that's the goal, is to be more of a guide, trusted partner, collaborator who understands the nuances of the design process someone else is trying to achieve, and then pairing up, being a curator of what's out there to extend and enhance their creative voice. And so that's really the intent, because otherwise, like you said, BIM police, you're running around trying to implement standards all day long in this sort of intent of saving time and templates everywhere, and this is the way Revit should be used, and or whatever tool, ArchIT. And I just think, eventually we will get to a point where we see, I don't need to customize this whole piece. I can just accept standards. And then this area over here is where I can really express my creative freedom. And, I don't think people really have a clear understanding of the trade-offs between, if I customize this, it's not really buying me any time back. So why am I rethinking it? So yeah, I definitely wanted to kind of break that perception of BIM manager. I mean, again, I know there's a role out there. They've got functional jobs with that. It's just the perception that took a long time to reset at my previous firm was coming alongside people as trusted guides. They wouldn't just kick their problems over the fence to you to come clean up after they're done. Because, the model's too heavy, or it's moving slow, or it can't publish or print. It's like, no, it's not just health, it's creative opportunity. And so you can hit both. If the door is to save time with doing better BIM standards, okay, great. Use that time, buy it back, and then reinvest in the exciting things that can help make your process even better. So we spent long conversations sorting out how to improve that relationship.
Yeah, I like the way that you're explaining that. It makes a lot of sense to me. And the idea, I think this has been floating around a lot in technology of focusing on automating the things away that are less valuable so you can spend more time on the more valuable things. And so coming from a standpoint of doing that implementation in firms, what has that conversation been like for you? How have you convinced people that that is a useful thing to pursue? Because I think a lot of times we do go back to, we default to the things we already know.
Hmm.
We know how to do those really well. It looks valuable. It's perceived as valuable because I'm checking all the boxes, right?
Hmm.
People say I'm busy doing
Hmm.
this thing, and busy is valuable. How are you doing? How's the week going? Oh, so busy. It's just busy, busy, busy. What if it wasn't like that? I mean, that, and I think what I'm wondering from your experience is how did that conversation go? And how, when did you ever see the light bulb turn on where you show somebody something's possible and they're like, whoa, okay, I'm interested in that.
Hmm.
And so just talk through that because you
Hmm.
you've lived it, you've experienced it. So I'm curious because I know there's a lot of people really struggling with that, right? Which
Hmm.
is no, like people literally have their hands up, go away. I'm
Hmm.
not interested because I already know that like the way that I do it is perceived as valuable to the person who's signing my time card or my bonuses attached to that or whatever. So
Hmm.
again, my goal is to give technology companies and
Hmm.
founders and people who are coming at this from the outside an understanding of what it's like where the rubber meets the road because you're trying to teach people your firm's process could potentially depend on
Hmm.
the things that we're talking about here, right?
Sure. Sure,
Whereas
sure, sure.
they're selling a new tool to try to make
Hmm.
that better, but they can't connect the dots to the actual people who you have
Yep.
to get to adopt to use it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can speak from my experience. I'm sure it could be getting evolved in other places, but so with not every firm has maybe the luxury of having dedicated design technology leaders at their
Right.
firm, right?
Hmm.
But when that's there, those are the gatekeepers for new vendors to get into firms. Eventually, even if someone finds it, a designer, do not run out and take the firm's logo and stamp it on your website until you have licenses and you've got projects. And all right, so that's my little spiel on that. But I was one of those gatekeepers on a team of people who in different areas we had different focuses. So depending on the sort of area, we were able to we had enough staff that we could focus on different types of tools, right? It wasn't just one person for all design technology, which was nice because then you could get deeper on a certain area. Like I was very deep on sustainability tools and simulation software. So, the next step was then, okay, we've got this bucket of tools. We've got people who know you're a point of contact internally. We would intentionally mask that uh, because we didn't want everyone ringing our phone. We wanted to have that room to research, evaluate, do the comparisons, build the ROI, right? And then bring it back to leadership for consideration. And you may have to wait until certain license agreements are out because you don't know if they already have a 3-5 year agreement in place. So that's unfortunate because, okay, they may be the perfect fit on every functional need, but they've already got their budgets allocated for these longer commitments. So I can't really, so that's just a reality. Sometimes with business, they'll negotiate longer term deals. And then in terms of evaluation, so getting it used, I mean, there's a lot to persuade people to try it out. A lot of times, again, if you had that person who had the high aptitude or the dedicated specialist, they would try to build up a proof of concept. So I would work with the team, I'd identify the projects, we'd persuade them that this was valuable to just try this one new tool or this one new approach on a very specific, you know, 12-week engagement or 15-week engagement. And then throughout, we'd show them how we were going to gather feedback and be there to support them and, ensure that they had success no matter how good or not good the tool was, right? They were going to be successful no matter what. So giving them that assurance was everything. Now, the challenge was fulfilling that because, okay, you could say everybody in the firm needs this tool, but if you can't win one project, how are you expecting to win every project? And so you really had to sort of land there, see it through, take the time necessary to do it really well, document the process, capture the story, get it in terms of the words from the designers, and then I was one of those people who was also translating the feedback from the designers to functional requirements that the engineers from the tool maker would then consider as part of the roadmap to improve the software next. So that relationship was really important to, give that two-way feedback. And so it was like client relationship management. Certain individuals at the firm had ownership over certain accounts and so I couldn't just reach directly out to certain vendors depending on the relationship. So that was real. So I realized the challenge is just finding the right person to talk with. But I think the more you can get a proof of concept, even internally, I would take that story and then we would start to use that as a way to establish precedent, and then other people would jump on. Again, it was one project at a time, and until certain stuff just took a grind. Other things, they were just like wildfire. Everyone just saw the value immediately, and overnight we adopted the tool. But most of the time, getting people to appreciate the value, it was a process. And we always.
And how did you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, like how did you, so there's the idea of like a lunch and learn, right?
Sure.
Where it's, let's show off what we did on this project. It is not unlike a building product manufacturer coming into the office and buying lunch for the people who are willing to sit through their presentation so that they can learn about a building product that they are 99.9% not going to use on the project that they're working on right now. But it's just putting a seed out there to say this thing exists. I'm the person you should call if you're ever interested in using it, and creating a connection, right? And so the expectation, I think, is there from both sides that is correct, which is the outsiders coming in and saying, look, here's this thing, here's what it does, here's why you should know about it. And also knowing that it's not going to hit right now. It's not going to find its feet on everybody's project who showed up to that room, but just saying, look, this thing exists. The people coming to that presentation are also acknowledging that their interest, because they're curious and because they want the sandwich, they're going to show up and they're going to listen and just file that away for later because it's not for right now, most likely. I think that this is not unlike that, right? Because it's this one way to get, and I'm going through all of this painstaking process to say, like, how does technology even get visible exposure inside of a firm when, there's definitely the people doing like little R&D here and there on their own time, their own curiosity, going out and searching on YouTube for tutorials on how to use it, or talking to somebody that they know, and they do hold on to it because it's like secret sauce. It's kind of special. It kind of makes them kind of special. And then there's your job, which is finding and identifying the big stuff that can make major changes, and then showing everybody with the potential. How do you get that message out, right? Because I think I want, again, technologists and technology providers to understand what's actually going on in the firms to get their products visible. I mean, or a new workflow, or any little piece of the solution, because there's a lot of work there.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're totally right. And I would say, so I'll try to simplify the process just to a Cliff Notes version, then we can expand if you want. But again, like if it's a big if you can identify the gatekeepers, I was in a position like that before where you'd evaluate it, you sort of have a one-on-one, they'd give you a product demo, you'd say, this is pretty cool. You'd then bring it back to the bigger team within that department, and you'd say, okay, is this worth considering? Someone who may actually have the purse strings or may have more visibility across the firm to say, yeah, I know a principal is doing this and they have a project upcoming. So we started to get to a position where we were, again, it took a while, but the design technology group started to get more optics as partners in the business building process. Like, how do we actually turn digital differentiator or technology as something that is a differentiator for the practice to land the work? So then we were getting involved with the business development and the pursuit. So if you could start to associate upstream with the right tools and the right tech stack that then sets the firm apart, and maybe 95% of it's standard and 5% research, right? then you can start to find those opportunities to pilot the tech sooner and without, because it's sort of rolled up into a pursuit marketing budget. It's not sort of carved out from the fee that they've pitched on. And then over time, that started to see the value, and then they would actually set hours into the schedule to have that freedom. So I think it's always challenged, but moving upstream. And then to your point, like, okay, I do think getting that pre-qualification process is essential because, in my previous experience, we were doing our own internal CEUs. We would actually curate our own training content, go get it approved for continuing education, and then, show it to the region or to the firm, and now get approved. And so people would prioritize that because they knew we'd taken the time to pre-validate or vet what content was being shown. And so sometimes it was bring a vendor in for half of it. Sometimes it was we'd do half, or sometimes we'd get a presentation behind the scenes before we'd bring it publicly to the firm. Again, that's all just internal promotion. There's plenty of vendors that we had relationships with. Again, I'm speaking of my last firm's experience, but it is a challenge because it's hard to see, am I talking to the right individual, and does that individual know how to take the information I'm giving them back to the right person? I think that's the challenge is, again, as mentioned, managing up. If I'm, a user or a modeler, someone who's in the work every day, I've got my desktop up, I've got my research up, I'm sort of always heads down, I'm not doing all the other business development activities. They may be your best advocates because they're using it, but then they can't communicate what they're finding back to the right person.
Yep.
Who then has the actual authority to make a decision on piloting that. So, that's really what I saw as the process is, as long as that point of contact is extremely well known internal to the firm, and everybody out there is sort of the extension, the fingers, they're familiar with it, then they know how to create that feedback to get the conversation flowing. And now you actually have, you have the opportunity to present to somebody that can make a decision. So it's a challenge. I'm not going to say it's not, especially in I was at a big firm. It's not like everyone's talking between offices. I mean, each office was kind of, I don't know. I mean, sometimes they're connected, sometimes they're on an island unto themselves. And
yeah,
it was different on a per office basis. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
This episode is made possible with support from Confluence. Picture this: October 2019, Lexington, Kentucky, the birthplace of Confluence, a place where tech leaders, AEC product developers, and practitioners came together for 3 transformative days. It was more than a conference. It was a confluence of ideas, discussions, and unforgettable social experiences. Since then, over 200 attendees have experienced the magic of Confluence. I've had the privilege of being part of 3 of these remarkable gatherings, 2 in Kentucky and 1 in Orange County, each one a melting pot of learning, collaboration, and camaraderie around a topic shaping our industry. And now we're thrilled to announce the next regional Confluence event in April 2024 in the vibrant heart of New York City. This time, we dive deep into the realms of AI and machine learning, unraveling their mysteries and potentials in our industry. Are you interested in being part of this exciting journey? To continue the conversation, to shape the future? Visit the link in the show notes for more details. Confluence, where ideas flow, connections form, and the future of AEC technology is shaped, one conversation at a time. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the Troxel Podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation. I think tech providing companies know this, right? And they're making, I think we've seen a huge shift into cloud-based software, right? And that targets the user, right? And so it really does put the onus on the users to try to create a grassroots effort in a firm. It actually enables them to be able to do that because they don't have to ask for IT's permission necessarily to do something. That's a big shift, right? Where in the olden days, back when I was, practicing architect and doing design, it was like, can I please get this piece of software? I had to actually say, here's the value that it's going to deliver to me and my job and our timeline on this project, and it's worth this much. I already know how to use it. Right? You don't even have to pay for any training. And that was to speak about the gatekeepers, right? And now these companies realize that, like, wow, it just runs in a tab. Anybody can use Miro or Arcol or whatever, right? And it's like, that's a totally different thing. And so now there is much more potential for grassroots efforts to start. At the same time, to speak to what you were just speaking about, leadership is completely disconnected from the complexity of modern software. And therefore, it's like, what do you mean we need another tool to do that? We already have these tools. We spend a lot of money on these tools, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on Autodesk and Adobe, just to name two, right?
Sure.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for a medium-sized to a large-sized firm is going to two companies. What do you mean we need more? Like, those things do it all. I was watching Nicolas Catelier's presentation at the Arcol retooling AEC event. And he showed his famous Revit railing graphic that he put together. Have you seen this graphic?
It's not ringing a bell. Yeah.
It's just the railing tool. And it's all the parameters of the railing tool. Which ones are buried 3 levels deep, 2 levels deep, 1 level deep. And it's a program unto itself. The railing tool in Revit, just like the stair tool, it's like a whole app. And there's so much complexity to that tool. If you showed that this would be an amazing lunch and learn. Show that to your firm's leadership and say, this is what it takes to drive a railing. Like, you see the railing, you have no idea what it took to make that railing in software, to actually control the parameters, make sure that it gets coordinated with the details and the section cuts and the plan views, the elevations, like everything for it to look just right, for all of that to actually work, for the spacings to line up, to meet ADA and do all these things, because it's a special handrail. It's not just like a typical guardrail, right? It's a special handrail. And this is what it takes to drive that. I think they'd be blown away, because it's like, what do you mean? It's just a railing. You know, everybody has railings in their projects, but this shows the opportunity for new software to come in and do something better, for sure. And at the same time, from the top, we're getting this pushback of, what do you mean you need more tools? Like, we already have a tool that does that. So why are you wasting your time looking at other things? And this is not a conversation that is going over very well in firms. And this is what tech providers are also up against.
I would say, if you want to establish trust and break in, if you can be part of the nurturing of that value-based conversation, I feel like tech providers are great at, maybe I'm just speculating here, but going for funding and having that elevator pitch and having 10 slides to get seed funding. Well, how can you empower the users to have a concise version of the value just like that from their perspective? You know, and then if you help them with that, they'll be your best advocates, where it's just an extension of your sales team because it's internal. And to your point, I remember it's the build versus buy conundrum. You know, I remember, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And I remember deep diving on Dynamo and Grasshopper as a grad student way back. And then you get all excited with the possibility of, you know, no constraints and everything's possible, and you're all excited. And then next thing you know, everything is a nail to hit with your hammer, your newfound hammer that you, but then the moment you try to show someone all of that, you know, that algorithm, just everything that's happening under the hood, their eyes glaze over and they just dismiss you. Right. And I remember when I was a younger professional having, why can't we just, and it was from a leader, there's that word, use AutoCAD instead of Revit? You know, why can't we? And they were focusing on the churn and the deliverable, and they had a point, you know, but they wanted to understand why Revit versus AutoCAD, that classic question. I thought we were already past that point, you know, and same thing, you know, is it Grasshopper versus Dynamo? And honestly, who cares? In my opinion, should we buy the tool versus build the tool? And to your point, it feels like that, because just the moment you buy the tool, it's like you're not leveraging it. And that's really where I made a full-time job out of taking the existing tech stack that was already procured and making the most of it, and focusing.
Which is a huge investment. That existing tech stack is a huge. Exactly. And like you said, it could be, you could have already bought it for the next 3 or 5 years. right? To
Yeah.
make it a little even more complex.
And the challenge is, unfortunately, I don't know. I mean, it's basically, I would probably still be in architecture if I didn't see such a huge need for this, right? Like having the dedicated job to integrate, focus on integration and application. So you're not just talking in abstract terms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was everything from publicly available tools to proprietary tools. And it was the same problem. If you can't get real, tangible, practical feedback from the users, or if there's all these little moments where they get stuck using it, or do I have permission from my leadership and management to actually use the tool? So they're worried about doing something wrong. They may be super aptitude, like the best aptitude, best tool, best user interface, and they don't have permission from leadership. So again, they need to be able to serve
You have
up
to
that
align
opportunity.
all of that. Yeah, you have to get it all in alignment. It's hard.
Yeah. And so nurturing that conversation again was like 70% of my time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good segue to talk about what you're doing now with Sevenfold.
Sure.
And to be clear, that's the number 7 and then fold. And Sevenfold,
FOLD.
we'll put a link to it in the show notes so you
Yeah.
can see what Timothy's up to. So you have obviously recognized that there is a void in the market. You said it earlier yourself. Not every firm has a design technologist, a person who understands the nuance of speaking the different languages of the different people who are working in the office to connect the dots along the whole production pipeline and make sure we're not losing data along the way so that we can actually see the true potential of what the technology and the software has to offer throughout the entire process. And there's an aspect of training to that as well. So I just want to hand over the mic to you at this point and talk about why you're doing what you're doing and then what it's all about.
Yeah, I really appreciate the platform and the space, Evan. And I'm glad you're hosting these conversations. It's so needed. So Sevenfold it was born out of kind of what we've been talking about. There's two arms to it. There's the Sevenfold Academy, which is self-paced courses that help, raise that all ships rise with, the change of technology. So I'm launching a series of, core practice courses that can help. I'm targeting emerging professionals, 0 to 7 years of experience, to help baseline. And then from there, launch more specialized courses depending on what the need of the market is. But really what we've been getting at is more of the consulting arm. So how to drive, taking what the trainings provide and then integrating that to the specific firm requirements, project requirements, accounts, etc. And having a true holistic digital transformation strategy, not just buying the next cool software and sticking it in the hands of your whiz-bang designer, but really getting that alignment from top to bottom so that the whole firm can move in sync and lockstep. And it's lining up the client expectations, the fee scope and schedule to the actual capabilities of the software. So, driving that digital transformation. Yes, my background is architecture, but I'm positioning more in that middle space to bridge academia and commercial practice as well as construction and software providers. So again, I'm mostly serving architecture firms, but I've already been having conversations with folks on the material providing side who are trying to provide architects with tools, or, it's really just trying to help bridge that digital transformation. So, you'll be seeing courses. I've got 3 courses planned for 2024. First 100 students, they get part of a pilot group, to join me and ask their questions. I'm not trying to just launch yet another Revit course out there. It's, I wouldn't be making it if I didn't see the need, because it's everything we talked about today. It's that outcome driven, value driven mindset woven into the capabilities of the tool. And so I hope that, as I continue to partner with other, trusted tech providers, that's one way they've engaged me, as well as providing technical documentation, developing tutorials, helping bridge that into firms. So a lot of times, and this is my final thought, is, the design technology leader inside a firm may be overwhelmed with fixing problems all day long, but then they can't ever get their head above the water and look ahead to research and actually differentiate where the firm is going. So that's another way where I can help mobilize that initiative, give it a spark, and then with the goal of empowering people in the firm to take it forward. And then you sort of throttle back to just being available on an as needed basis. So I'm really all about empowering people, not creating any sort of codependent relationship. So that's my goal.
I think it's incredibly important that you are coming from a practice role,
Yes.
because you understand what they're dealing with on a day. You understand the deadlines, you understand the limitations or the possibilities of the technology.
Yep.
Probably even more so than they do, right? Because you've taken the time to dedicate a huge chunk of your life to becoming to really be having an expertise in these different platforms. And so you may just know that things exist that they don't, and that could be a huge help immediately, but you also know how to apply it and how it affects the outcome of the project.
Exactly.
Which is, again, I think this is incredibly important for the tech side to understand of why these people like you why you need to exist in the marketplace, because there's a huge lack of resources in so many firms out there. So who is your target audience for the things that you're working on? I mean, there's all different sizes of firms. There's all different technologies being used already that they've invested hugely in, and it's very hard to switch out of. But I'm sure you have kind of like you talk about this initial cohort. Who are you really looking for to become a part of that?
Yeah. So I like to say I'm serving firms and teams of sizes 1 to 1,000. I've worked on some international projects, very comfortable working on multinational, multi-office projects. But my initial cohort for the academy, that's my long-range vision to grow that. So I'm starting with emerging professionals. That's my term for 0 to 7 years experience. So everything from students who are in school trying to get that first internship. I want anybody who comes through the Sevenfold Academy to be at the top of the resume stack, to be the sought after talent. And then folks who are new to us software, maybe they're bridging from, AutoCAD to Revit or SketchUp to Rhino, or bridging from a new software. That's also a perfect group who want the shortcut to getting high impact, high value training. I've been there searching Google and YouTube for partial solutions all over the place. I wanted one place that had sort of the bedrock, and then have the conversation on what we want to specialize into. So really that's the goal, is to create that one place. And if it was already out there, I wouldn't be making it. So that's the goal.
Again, I appreciate what you're doing, because it gives firms who don't have those dedicated resources an option. Even if they can't dedicate resources to those, they probably can afford to have somebody come in and really inject really pointed, high value information and process into what they're already doing.
Yeah, and I'll just add, this is the one call to action. You can go to the Sevenfold.io website, hit the contact button, request a discovery session, and I've got a menu of things that people have been reaching out about that I can offer expertise to. But again, the benefit is getting that tailored solution to the needs of your firm. And so if it's beyond my scope of expertise, I'll gladly let you know. But, I want to create that conversation. And again, the tailored experience is what I specialize at. So,
yeah. Fantastic. Well, the website is 7fold.io, and that's Timothy's new venture. I'm excited for you, man, and I hope that this is going to work out well for you. I think the things that you shared today really do kind of give the peek behind the curtain of what it's like to deal with digital technology, design technology, BIM technology, training, all of, what I would consider like a digital practice kind of. This was just a great insight, a window into what it actually takes in a firm to make that kind of thing happen. It's not a walk in the park. It's incredibly nuanced. There's a lot of audiences within a firm. There's politics, there's budgets, there's all these things, there's contracts, there's risk, right? And these teams are the ambassadors of a lot of these tech companies into the firms, and they have a lot working against them. They also have a lot working for them. If they are like Timothy and they've developed relationships with leadership and they are the kind of people who understand a lot of this nuance, that's a huge benefit. But at the same time, there's a lot of people out there who don't have all that as well. And that is, my goal was to kind of pull the curtain back. And I want to do it
Yeah.
with more episodes with people in who have had different experiences or in different positions in firms. So look for this series of practitioners on the Troxel podcast to grow. But it was great having you here,
Thanks for
Timothy,
having me.
to be the first one. So I'll put
Yeah.
links to your LinkedIn and your website
Okay.
on in the show notes. But if there's anywhere else that you want to let people know about, now's your chance.
That is the place to be. Sevenfold.io is the place to check out. And thanks for having me, Evan. I'm hopeful, if you want to have me back, I'd love to be back. This is obviously a deep conversation, and
Yeah,
looking
there's a lot
forward to
here.
seeing who wants to, see where it goes from here. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to our members this week. Find out how you can become a member at trxl.co, and I'll talk to you again next week.